Portland's famous restaurant scene will be on full display in front of the entire country on the next season of Top Chef, and it's at a time when it's never been in more trouble.
We would normally do 100+ guests.
So I talked to one of our local chef celebs and Top Chef alum about what he thinks needs to happen to keep the scene alive and cooking.
When restaurants close, the entire food chain is thrown out of whack.
Hey, we found out when Oregonians will finally start getting those extra $300 unemployment benefits we've been hearing about for weeks. And you might have missed it during all the bickering, but Portland got a bunch of debate shout-outs tonight, including this one.
Excuse me, Portland, the sheriff just came out today and he said, I support President Trump.
And the so-called Portland sheriff has something to say about that. Here's the story.
And I'm Dan Haggerty. Hi, welcome to The Story. I hope you enjoyed the first episode of a show where people compete to see who is smarter, faster on their feet, stronger competitor, until there's only one person left standing. We also hope that you enjoyed the premiere of The Weakest Link. Fun to see that show come back. If you're looking around right now and saying, hey, where's my usual 9 o'clock programming? Who's this dude? It'll be back tomorrow. Don't worry. As for tonight, you got us. What are we? We are local news. Just a little different, or maybe a lot different. We talk different. We look a little different. We also like your voice to get involved and in the mix as much as we can. So if you see something you like or something you don't like, let us know. Our contact info is on the screen. You can email us at thestory@kgw.com. Message me, Dan Haggerty, on Facebook, or tweet us using the hashtag HeyDan. All right. Why don't we get started? Now, look, before we get into our big story, I want to pass along some really, I think, exciting news. Portland is about to get some major exposure at a level that we haven't seen maybe since Portlandia. We found out this week that we are going to be the subject of the upcoming season of Top Chef. That's where chefs from all over the world, they come to town. They're actually here right now to compete in a reality show and maybe win some cash. The show always features local restaurants whenever they film, so you can bet you'll see some iconic Portland spots when the show debuts sometime next year. Portland chefs have been on this show before, and they've done quite well. Gregory Gourdet, this man, for instance, the executive chef at Departure in downtown Portland, he's been on it before. He's going to be a judge on the upcoming season. He made it to the finals both times he was on the show before. He competed against this local chef, Doug Adams, and at the time that their season aired, Adams was the chef at Imperial in downtown Portland. The same Imperial that just today announced with virtually no notice at all that it will be closing after 8 years. And that brings us to our big story, which is the huge amount of trouble our restaurant industry is in right now, right as it's about to be put on full display for the entire world in prime time. And Imperial is just the latest example of a Portland institution being taken down by the pandemic. Since March, we've lost 3 Pok Pok restaurants, the historic Bomber in Milwaukee, Rogue in the Pearl, No Bones on Mississippi, a bunch of Blue Star Donut locations, even the iconic Bistro Montage under the Morrison Bridge shut down. And when I say that that is only a partial list, the word partial is doing a lot of work in that sentence, because dozens of places have shut down across Oregon and Washington. And as tragic as that has been for people's livelihoods, it isn't really all that surprising. I mean, think of the last time you went to a restaurant. I'm not talking about getting takeout, not getting Chinese food delivered. Actually went out, sat down, ordered a drink from a server, ate a meal cooked by a professional chef, and then went home. Some of us have, right? But not nearly enough, according to local chefs.
And on a day like today and a night like tonight, we would normally do 100+ guests. And the truth is, last night we did probably about 15.
15 people instead of 100. All right, think about that. I'm a journalist. I'm not the best at math, but you take a $20 meal, $12 cocktail, $10 dessert. That's a loss of about $3,500 in one night. And it's been like this for months. Restaurants suffering, not because they can't fill the capacity, but because they're literally not allowed to. And these places aren't profit machines to begin with. Even super successful places operate within extremely thin profit margins. The website Restaurant 365 says generally restaurants have a profit margin that falls between 3% and 6%, but it can be up to 10%. Of course, it depends on the restaurant. And a lot of those profits come from alcohol sales. Now, Washington, they let restaurants serve alcohol to go. Oregon restaurants cannot do that. The OLCC only allows Oregon restaurants to sell factory-sealed cans or bottles of beer or wine to go, not liquor, and that's where they make a ton of money. So while on one hand it's still really important to do everything we can, of course, to prevent the spread of COVID-19 before we see a potential spike in the winter, which has been predicted, something needs to be done to keep what restaurants we still have afloat. And Oregon Congressman Earl Blumenauer agrees.
We've seen too many restaurants already close, and the evidence is that if there isn't something that is done to provide support, we could see up to 85% close permanently by the end of the year.
So, to hopefully prevent that, in June, the congressman introduced the Restaurants Act that would provide $120 billion worth of grants to independent restaurants. It would focus specifically on non-chain restaurants that make less than $1.5 million a year, ones owned by veterans, women, or minority communities. I wanted to get a feel of the pain that this industry is truly experiencing, so I talked to one of those famous Portland chefs who are out there. He happens to be the guy I mentioned a few minutes ago, Top Chef alum Gregory Gourdet.
It is one of the most difficult industries to succeed or even to survive in. So how important right now is any exposure or attention to the Portland culinary scene, and how vital is it that some places start to get more people into their restaurant, or at least taking their food to go, things of that nature?
Indeed. COVID has hit us pretty hard. I think one of the things that make Portland and Oregon absolutely amazing is the food chain. And, I think it's one of the reasons why we have so many amazing chefs living here and amazing restaurants, big and small and everything in between. But, our relationships really start with our farmers, our fishers, our foragers, all the people making all the amazing things that we eat, our brewers, all our wineries, all these amazing things that really create our food and beverage industry in our city and state. So when something is thrown out of whack, like when restaurants close, the entire food chain is thrown out of whack. So, when we're not allowed to serve diners and restaurants, our farmers suffer, our fishers suffer, our foragers suffer. So it's a tremendous snowball effect.
Do you think that people don't realize how bad it is or how dire it is for the restaurant scene and for the ownership of these restaurants in Portland?
Sure. I think the general public, to be quite frank, doesn't really have a very complete grasp of what it takes to run a restaurant, how slim the margins are. Restaurants do not make a lot of money. You have to be a pretty huge restaurant that's busy all the time to make a lot of money. And even then, costs are extremely high. So if you think about, the foundation of the city, the smaller restaurants that are, independently owned, margins are extremely slim when you're paying for top ingredients, you're paying for, your team's wages, things are slim. But I think, outside of that, you might think that there's a line outside a restaurant. A lot of people are picking up to-go orders, or, you happen to see, people who have outdoor dining right now and their little patio with 8 seats, 8 tables, it's full. That does not mean that the restaurant is busy. That literally means that there's probably as few people as possible working in that space. It's usually the chef, maybe 1 or 2 other cooks, a very small percentage of the original team, and they are just getting by.
Now, Gourdet supports Congressman Blumenauer's Restaurants Act that will be expected to come to a vote in Congress on October 1st. Now, of course, it isn't just restaurants struggling right now. A lot of people are. Tricia asked me a question that a lot of you have right now. Hey, Dan, any update on when we might start seeing that $300 a week for the LWA, or Lost Wage Assistance Program? So, Tricia, thank you for that question there. First, we'll explain kind of what you're referring to for people who may not know. If you do know and you're waiting for it, you definitely know what I'm talking about. But Oregon is one of 44 states that got approval to hand out extra federal unemployment benefits. But you're only eligible if you were unemployed between July 26th and August 15th. And if you do qualify, you get $300 for each week you were unemployed during that time frame. That was announced about a month ago, and until now we didn't know when people would actually start seeing that money as showing up in checks that they can start to spend. Today, the Employment Department tweeted out that they are planning to start issuing those payments tomorrow. Yes, so tomorrow. If you are eligible, you can expect that money to show up in your online claims account system. So that's good news for people. The Employment Department says they don't think the payments will be delayed, but they're going to make another announcement tomorrow to tell you exactly how it's working as those checks start to go out. Okay. So there is no avoiding it, I don't think. We have to talk about the debate a little bit. If you can call it that, I think you could technically call it that, because we will say Portland got a lot of airtime for better or worse.
In Portland, Oregon, especially, we had more than 100 straight days of protests. Have you ever called the Democratic mayor of Portland or the Democratic governor of Oregon and said, hey, you got to stop this?
Excuse me, Portland, the sheriff just came out today and he said, I support President Trump.
All right, you might have heard the president there say that he got the support of the sheriff of Portland. So two quick checks there on facts. Of course, there is no sheriff of Portland. Second, we asked Multnomah County Sheriff Mike Reese whether he made a statement of support to the president, and Sheriff Reese gave us our quote of the day. And the sheriff saying, I have never supported Donald Trump and will never support him. There was also a moment where President Trump was asked if he would denounce white supremacy, and instead of doing that, he suggested that the right-wing Proud Boys should, quote, stand back and stand by, which got prominent Proud Boys celebrating online, including one who said, quote, Trump basically said to go F them up. This makes me so happy. Our original plan tonight was to do a big fact-check piece this evening, and we're still doing that work, but I'm not alone, I don't think, in saying that right now that's kind of an unfact-checkable moment. That's not really what people are paying attention to, and we will be paying attention to it, but it was kind of hardly a debate. When it ended on NBC, Savannah Guthrie said exactly what I was thinking. She said, I think we need to pause for just a moment and say, that was crazy. And while that was kind of a crazy spectacle in our country's history, I'm going to try and linger in that pause, and I'm begging that you stay there with me. There is no reason to hop on your phone or Facebook or Twitter this week and to continue the bickering and the insults and the anger and the lack of listening that we watched from our two best choices to lead our country. That's who those people are supposed to be, by the way, our two best options out of millions. Did they seem like the best people for the job? I'm going to answer that one for you. No. What we saw tonight was not our country at its best. Instead, what you should take, I think, my opinion, is it should help you identify another virus that's infected this country's soul. The lack of respect that we show each other. I think that we all want to feel respected, whether we are right or wrong. If our intent is just, we expect respect, or at least we hope for it. But if you don't give it to other people, you will not get it back. And when you don't get it back, that can hurt. That can make you angry, and that can continue the cycle. I'm not saying anything new. You know this already. I'm just saying it out loud. And honestly, regardless of who you're voting for, I think you feel what I'm talking about. Something doesn't quite feel right. And neither one of those people up on the stage, regardless of who wins, regardless of who you vote for or who you support, neither one of those people on the stage can fix it. We have to do it. You have to do it. We have to start being nicer to each other. We have to start respecting each other and listening to each other. I don't want to get melodramatic here. I don't think that tonight was doomsday for American politics. I frankly wasn't all that surprised with how it went. But I will say, let's pause and reflect and hope for better in the next debate.
It's unlikely, but not impossible, for a president to win the election with the popular vote and not the Electoral College. So we're going to tell you how that could happen in the future. And what else is going on besides elections or pandemics? Well, we're going to talk about that other news coming up in a segment we call, well, In Other News, when the story continues.
Welcome back to The Story in Prime Time. I'm Dan Haggerty. Now, this is probably, maybe, possibly the first time you ever checked us out. Welcome. We are usually on at 6 o'clock. Set the DVRs. You can find us on YouTube, all that kind of stuff, too. But if you are new to us, we like to know what you think. Pick up the phone, send us an email, thestory@kgw.com, or you can tweet us using the hashtag HeyDan. Now, we spent a lot of time in the first part of the show talking about two things, COVID-19 and the election. Sometimes it feels like that's all we talk about, but I would like to mix it up right now, right out of the gate after the first commercial, with a segment we call In Other News.
In other news, wildfire evacuation orders have now been lifted for all of Clackamas County. This includes thousands of homes that have been under level 2 or 3 evacuations since the fires started spreading earlier this month. The Riverside Fire, which is the largest in the county, has burned more than 138,000 acres and is now 37% contained. Health officials are warning beachgoers to stay out of the water in Seaside because of higher than normal levels of fecal bacteria. Yeek. This can make you sick if you swallow the water or even go in it. They do say it's still safe to walk on the beach, so we got that going for us. Search teams found a 16-year-old boy who was missing near Mount St. Helens for more than 24 hours. Anthony Mancuso was hiking with his family Sunday when he got separated. Crews searched all day Sunday and Monday until they found his shoes last night. The teen was nearby and able to walk out with searchers. And that's in other news.
So a lot of you keep tweeting us with the hashtag HeyDan about our little cameo on premium cable this week. On Sunday, last week tonight with John Oliver used a 15-second clip from our segment that we did on the Electoral College, and a lot of our viewers noticed. Thank you again to HBO for all the love. But since they only used 15 seconds, we thought, well, why don't we show you the entire piece about the Electoral College, especially since in 35 days, that's how we're going to choose our president.
To understand how the Electoral College works, we first need to go back to when the system was created, during the Constitutional Convention of 1787, and the compromise they made for how to elect a president. Some were worried about the public choosing a leader, believing everyday citizens were uninformed about political issues. Others wanted to make sure Congress didn't pick the president either, to keep those branches of government separate. So they came up with a system of electors appointed by each state, independent from both people and politicians who cast their votes instead. Each state's share of electors is determined by its number of seats in the House and Senate, and since states' House seats are based off population, so are the electoral votes it gets. That's where slavery played a role when the system was developed. See, the South had a larger population than the North, but a smaller share of voters because slaves couldn't vote. But the South wanted more political power, so they came up with the 3/5 compromise. Slaves were counted as 3/5 of a person in population counts, which gave Southern states more electoral votes. Fast forward now to today, where we still use the Electoral College, of course, to pick a president. There are 538 electors across the country. A candidate has to get at least 270 of them to win the presidency. So why does our vote matter if electors are the ones picking the president? Well, most states, except for Nebraska and Maine, have laws requiring that all of their electors vote for the candidate who wins the state's popular vote. That means even if a candidate wins a state by just 51%, all that state's electoral votes will go toward that candidate. This kind of winner-take-all method means that the national popular vote can be different from the Electoral College vote, which has happened 5 times through history. Notably in 2016, when Hillary Clinton won almost 3 million more votes than Donald Trump nationally, but lost the Electoral College. And in 2000, when Al Gore won the popular vote, but lost the presidency to George W. Bush. Recently, 15 states and the District of Columbia joined the National Popular Vote Interstate Compact. They're pledging to give their electoral votes to the candidate who wins the national popular vote, rather than the person who wins the popular vote in their state. But this won't take effect until enough states adopt it, which so far hasn't happened.
Of course, Portlanders will be voting for much more than president this November. We're also going to be voting for mayor. And next Thursday, KGW and the Oregonian will co-host the debate between Portland Mayor Ted Wheeler and his challenger to the left, Sarah Iannarone. We want you to submit a video question, okay, that we're going to play for the candidates. So here's what we need you to do if you're interested. And I know a lot of you have questions. Use your phone, all right, the camera on your phone, and record yourself asking a question. Try to keep it clear and concise. It needs to be quick, like 10 to 15 seconds. I know that is a short time to ask a substantive question, but try your best. Make sure that you're recording in a quiet, well-lit place, and please include your name and the neighborhood where you live. Don't forget that part. When you're done, send it through one of the following ways. You can email the story at kgw.com. You can tweet it to us using the hashtag HeyDan, or send it to me on Facebook, Dan Haggerty KGW. You can search that and find me really easily. This is a real chance for you to speak directly to the people who are trying to run this city. I think you should take the opportunity. I'm hoping to hear from a lot of you. All right, we have one more break, and then we're going to read some of your comments. So pull out the phones, send me a message on Facebook, tweet us using that hashtag HeyDan. We're also going to look at one of the ways Portland's food industry is adjusting to the pandemic, like so many of us, by taking it virtual. When we finish the story next. We spent the top of the show talking about the status quo of Portland's dining scene, but we wanted to end tonight by talking about its future. Here's John Goodwin.
They're rolling out a new concept at the old Grand Central off Southeast Morrison.
Because a lot of times when you're working at home all day, you kind of need a break. People want to get out and go run an errand.
John Plew is CEO of Concept Entertainment. They've rebranded as Central Bowl, Arcade, and Food Hall. The idea's been in the works for a year, but the pandemic made them ramp it up.
When we first started thinking about the concept, we really wanted to, we started with virtual, but it's really not virtual. So we really call it online food hall.
So we'll have 6 concepts going out of one kitchen, and we're pretty excited about that.
Chef Keith Castro is John's business partner and runs the kitchen. He touts the high-end food and unpretentious service.
Just getting it ready and get to be creative. I mean, who doesn't want to be creative? It's so much fun.
Wings, burgers, Mexican, and Southern-style cuisine are among the concepts. You order on your phone, and the system back here not only sends the order to the right prep station, it maps it out for the kitchen staff.
So that when the order comes in, something that takes a long time, let's say it's a fried chicken dish, it'll take 10 or 15 minutes. That's going to go first, and the other stations won't even see the salad until it gets closer to being done and complete. Then that pops up. So the idea is that all the food comes up in the window all at once.
Put their food in on their phone or on their computer, tells you when it's going to be ready. As soon as you get here, it sends us a notification and we run your food out to you.
Central Kitchen will open on October 6th with a soft opening this weekend.
Open the dining room, and then the bowling and arcades really up to the municipality of when we get to phase 2.
When they get there, seating will be spaced apart. John and Keith hope soon Central Kitchen will help bring friends and families together.
But I think that people wanted an opportunity to go out and have fun, enjoy it, and do so responsibly. So we'll give them that opportunity here.
In Southeast Portland, John Goodwin, KGW News.
All right, let's talk about some comments. We did a little math at the top of the show. We were talking about the really tight margins and kind of what restaurants are doing right now, how much money they're losing. And Dan McLean wrote in and just said the title, math. As a general rule, don't do math in public. You know what? That's good advice. I'm going to skip it next time. Don't check my work. We had Laura J. Lee write in. Hi, Dan. It's nice to have Top Chef in Portland. I hope it brings some interest to Portland for a positive reason. I agree. I think it's gonna show some of the beautiful things that are happening here in this city. And as we know, as we've seen some of the unrest, which is happening in pockets of our town, there's still a lot. Most overwhelmingly, there's beautiful things happening here and wonderful businesses to support. Also, somebody writing in, this is Melissa, said, hey Dan, don't count out Vancouver. Remember, we had a Top Chef competitor open smokehouse. Our team at the Story wrote her back tonight and said, looks like BJ Smith, who opened Smokehouse Provisions in Vancouver, is a Portland guy, but good thinking. I'm going to go ahead and split the difference on that. I'm going to give it to both. Vancouver, way to go. Great restaurants there as well. Look, it doesn't stop at the border. I mean, there's great cuisine up and down. It's about this whole region. It's about our ability to kind of go out and have really great farms and great access to seafood. I think that's one of the reasons why chefs want to work here so bad. I did have my little commentary on the debate tonight, and Santa Danny, nice name, said, well said. It didn't feel right. It was not a surprise. Let's hope something changes in the next few months and returns to a civil society. I also got something from Gina, who said, F you, Biden is horrible. So some people heard what I had to say, some people didn't, but it's okay. All right, let's try and be better as we move forward. You know, someone said, are you serious equating Biden and Trump's performance in tonight's debate? That's not what I'm talking about. Nobody's waving a watch in front of the screen and trying to hypnotize us. You know how to act, right? Thanks for being with us.